Welcome to the Voices of Empowered Parents podcast, where families, educators, and professionals come together to support children with disabilities and the parents who walk beside them. I am your host, Dr. Julie M. Lane, founder of Empowering Parents Network. At EPN, our mission is to help parents of children with disabilities feel informed, prepared, and supported as they navigate the special education system. We believe parents deserve clear guidance, practical tools, and a community that reminds them they do not have to walk this journey alone. Today, I'm honored to welcome Lisa Gurdin. Lisa has spent more than 25 years working with students from preschool through age 22, along with their families and school-based teams. Her work supports children with a range of special needs and complex profiles through consultation, evaluations, staff training, and parent coaching. Lisa's approach centers on contemporary ABA, an approach rooted in current research, neurodiversity-affirming practices, trauma-informed care, assent-based treatment, cultural responsiveness, and compassion. Today, we'll discuss how parents and professionals can work together with mutual respect, how behavior support can strengthen relationships rather than damage them, and how families can support their child's growth while honoring who they are as individuals. Lisa, welcome to Voices of Empowered Parents.
Thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to talk about how we can support parents along their journey with their children.
Lisa, you have more than 25 years working with students, families, and school professionals. What experiences most shaped your compassionate and collaborative approach to behavior support?
Truthfully, I kind of came out of the box with that approach. It is really who I am. And even way back when I started working one-on-one with autistic kiddos in their homes and, working with families, it I have always brought a compassionate approach to the work. I am a compassionate person, so while our, the way we handle behavior has thankfully shifted over the years, my compassion has always been there. So for me, um, it is reinforcing in and of itself to approach parents and other providers with compassion, with curiosity, and with, uh, a true interest in what they're experiencing and figuring out how I can help, whether it was way back when I was working directly with kiddos, and ever since I have worked with school teams. Like I said, it's been self-reinforcing where I would sit down with a social worker and ask a bunch of questions and I'd have all these aha moments that just propelled me to continue working in that way. And certainly we've been really successful with collaborative approaches. So it's really been how I've worked the whole time.
That's wonderful. We talk about ABA, and in special education, we live in this alphabet soup um, culture and language. But I don't even know how many of our listeners know what ABA stands for,
Sure.
nor do they know how it came about. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. It's been around since Skinner days, and it really is, when you uh, look at it on its basic level, it's really looking at the relationship between behavior and the environment, including our internal environment. And so, for me, the approach was really liberating, because as a person who thought a lot about my own behavior and others' behavior and analyzed it so much and have it be so heavy all the time, this approach allowed me to kind of be more objective and to say, oh, wait a second, I can make these changes in what I do and the way things are set up in my environment in order to achieve my goals. And so for me, it's an approach that is not a one size fits all. You know, we learn about why behaviors occur, we learn how to assess them, and we learn all kinds of interventions that can be used across people, regardless of age, regardless of setting. So it's a pretty effective approach that has a ton of research behind it. Um, and years ago, behavior analysts were working in institutions, right, with autistic individuals and individuals with developmental disabilities. And then some work was done in the context of homes and doing very significant work, 40-hour week work with autistic kiddos. And they had incredible effects of kids learning a whole range of skills. So much so that at the time they lost their diagnosis of autism, which was at the time revolutionary, right? It is not how we, our goal today, and not something we look to do. But at the time, it was kind of opened the door for how to best teach autistic children the skills they need that they weren't learning naturally. But ABA is a full approach that we can use to, again, change anybody's behavior. I've used it on myself to change my own behavior. The concepts are just really relevant to all of us, and complementary to other approaches as well. So it's not a standalone kind. I don't think, and I've never practiced that way, as we talked before. It's not a standalone approach. It's very complementary to other different types of disciplines.
Right, and when we talked last, you also mentioned how ABA has gotten this bad rap.
Yeah.
And what was that bad rap? How did it come about? And how can we move away from that?
Yeah, yeah, I've been in the field so long and I've watched this evolution. And what happened was the autistic community who went through ABA therapy when they were younger started to talk about the negative experiences they had. And those negative experiences included people ignoring them, people kind of letting them tantrum and kind of waiting them out. It's called extinction
Mhm.
procedures, right? Um, and at the time, that was what we did. That's what we knew to do. It is within our behavioral science. It's very effective, and yet it's not so kind. So while I did that back then, I would no way do it now or tell anyone else to do it. Right? It's not a kind approach. But at the time, it was what we did with the intention of helping kids engage in the behaviors, that was good, that were helpful for them, that were good for them, that were leading to goals, and skills, and kind of helping them, not tantrum every all the time, and self-injurious behavior, and been used to decrease self-injurious behavior and really intense behavior that was really interfering with their progress, like significantly, and unsafe, causing a lot of harm. So that's where we were, and this negativity happened, and because of social media, it kind of took off and became a life of its own, where there's a lot of talk amongst parents, amongst the autistic community. And it's unfortunate because it focuses on that piece of it. And yet there's so much more that went on as well, and so much good and well intentioned, right? So while just like in every field, we learn more and more about, right? With medical treatments, we learn more and more and more and more. And so luckily, we have listened to the autistic community. We have re-looked at how we do things. And we really are focused on compassionate care, compassionate based interventions, where we're not just ignoring someone, where we're understanding and validating, hey, this is really hard, and let me help you. So it's come a long way. The where we're at right now in the field is there's many of us that have moved into this space of compassionate care, and there are a group of people who haven't. And that's the shift in approach, right? And that's going to be part of that evolution. So for me, I do as much talking about ABA and talking about compassionate approaches, shifting from compliance based interventions to engagement, set based approaches. And I look for those opportunities to talk about it because the more we talk about it, the more people will shift over, the more compassionate we will be, and the better outcomes we will have. Outcomes including positive experiences, with behavior analysts.
Oh, that's awesome. There is so often, a certain group of individuals or even just a very small group at a school site that something isn't going well. And out of their frustration, which is truly frustration, they start to say things, and we have to come back and regroup, and we have to come back and listen to each other and communicate with each other.
Yes.
And one thing about communication that I find, and as I'm working with pre-service teachers or even current teachers, is we've got to stop talking and we have to start listening. And that's just
Yes.
not listening to words, it's listening to the behaviors around us. And we have to get away from this knee-jerk reaction that when a student has a behavior that we as an individual do not feel is appropriate, or it breaks a school or a classroom rule, we need to step back and not react to it and rather listen to it.
Mhm.
So as we talk about behaviors are telling us something, we need to listen to those behaviors. How can parents and even teachers um, take that first step in learning how to become better listeners of behavior?
Yeah. You know what I think it is? I think it's the power of pause. And I don't mean pause for 10 minutes or even 3 minutes necessarily, right? A pause can be a 15-second pause to allow ourselves to gather, take a deep breath, and kind of, consider what is happening here because clearly something isn't right. Because if it was all right, the kid would do what the kid needs to do and what they're being asked to do. Like kids do well if they can, right? They do well whenever they can. And so if they're not in that moment, I am always thinking about safety, of course, making sure everyone's safe, and sort of what is happening here. What do I know about the child? What is happening? And when we pause, we can be more in that responsive place instead of reactive, right? Where we're kind of like thinking, we're deciding, and usually we can kind of move on from that moment and deal with that particular behavior another time, right? But I always tell staff and parents, like, it's about getting back on track versus sitting there 45 minutes going into a back and forth or, having a kid shut down or completely melt down. Like if you can move on and kind of think about it later, talk to your team, talk to, you know, fellow parents or your parenting partner about what happened and kind of think through it, you can then think about how to proactively do things slightly differently to maybe avoid that situation, right? So it's not, I tell people it's not about consequences, it's about support in that moment. It's about what needs to happen here to support a child. And particularly if you're talking about neurodiverse kiddos, they have lots going on. So there's something happening, but that's true of all humans, to be honest. It's not, everyone has those moments where they're not their best selves or not doing what they should be doing for whatever reason. We all can relate to that.
Yes, absolutely. Collaboration between parents and schools. As an educator, as a former director of special ed, and as a consultant, um, I often talk about collaboration being about those plural pronouns of what we can do and what our goal is and how can we come together to support this child. But yeah, we seem to divide ourselves. And parents and educators should come to the table knowing they both carry a lens of that child that needs to be heard and listened to. So, what are some ways families and school teams can work together to effectively support a child with autism?
Yeah, I think, coming to the table again with curiosity, ready to sort of ask questions when someone says something and you're like, wait, what? And, to say, hey, can you tell me more about that? Or can we talk about that later? I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean or why that's important. Um, I think that, so it's that curiosity and respect for someone's relationship with that child, with someone's lens, whether it's through a parenting lens or it's the social work lens or the educator lens. Having respect for their experiences, and have being very open to truly, connecting the dots for a child because they are not, none of us are the sum of our parts. We are an integrated, connected human being. All of the pieces work, you know, sometimes against each other. Sometimes not helpful, pieces of it, but they're all connected. And so even though you're sitting at an IEP meeting and you have six different professionals and a parent sitting there, it's not six different areas for the child that complete are in a vacuum, right? It's all of the things that work together. And so, if we come with that approach and we value other people's experiences and expertise, including parents, then we're more apt to listen and we're more apt to ask questions and we're more apt to work truly together and not pretend together, but truly, making those connections with one another.
Absolutely. And I know for me, whenever I'd walk into one of those meetings, I wouldn't start with my procedural safeguards. I wouldn't start with the documents. I'd just say, you know, how are you doing? And I'm talking just to the parent and giving them the floor for as long as they need it to tell their story, how things are going on at home. And then as we walk through the procedural responsibilities we do have, um, providing that opportunity for parents to speak into it. But I'm just curious, Lisa, have you found an approach that really helps that parent feel like they're an equal team member and not just there out of a requirement?
Yeah, I think um, it works well when everyone, again, comes to that table with that same value of collaboration and that same value and mutual respect for one another, for parents. When I present, information, I'm talking directly to parents and I'm not using any lingo and I'm just, talking about their child in a way that's, I think, this is what I think they're experiencing. This is what I observed. This is really hard for them. What do you see at home? But really talking in a way that they can understand and be part of that conversation rather than, I'm the expert. I'm going to tell you what's happening here. And that's it. And your experience at home is your experience at home. And I just don't approach it that way. So I think if we all can, honestly smile and talk to them and how are you? I mean, it's amazing to me how many people walk, right? How many people walk into a meeting, they sit down, they don't smile, they don't say hello, especially on Zoom, forget about it, right? It's like really, right? And I'm like, just everyone, if everyone came in to the Zoom or to the in-person meeting and sat down and looked at people and say, hi, how are you? How was the weekend? I heard you went here. How did it go?
Hmm.
Everyone would simmer down right? And
Yes,
just
yes,
so
absolutely. What practical strategies do you think parents can use at home to encourage independence, communication, and strengthen that family relationship, and
yes.
including that the siblings who are typical,
Yes.
because those siblings are so much affected as well.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Um, yeah. Look, you know, the truth of the matter is it's often all of the things I'm going to say have to be individualized, right? Depending on child, the family's dynamics, the situation. I always, you know, go in with the approach that, a child, when you're working with a family about a particular child, always talking about the context, which is siblings and what else happens there, who else is involved. They don't live in a vacuum at home. So definitely bringing everybody, bringing, those who are in the home into the conversation and figuring out if there is how, if there is a place for whatever, your intervention or approach strategy you're talking about. And if not now, when. And, it really is about looking at where a child is at today and figuring out those small shifts you can make over time that is feasible, that you can do, in the course of your day already, as it is already, to have opportunities to set a child up. Maybe it's with visuals, maybe it's a to-do list, on a post-it, um, setting them up to do as much as they can on their own. And if we need to do more for them now, fine, that's where we are today. So let's think about what it might look like as we gradually back off a little bit, right? What supports do they need in order to be more independent, in order to self-advocate, because we want to teach them to say, no, I'm not doing that right now. No, I'm not ready for that. Like they should be able to protest just like everybody else. Um, and so it's those kinds of supports. So it's figuring out where a kid is and where a family is and what shifts we can make gradually over time to help the child, like I said, self advocate, become more independent, and as that's happening, work in different activities, for example, to promote um, relationship building amongst family members. So, for example, baking a cake together or, cookies and making a list of what someone, what you need at the grocery store and going to the grocery store, getting the stuff, coming back, and having everyone be part of that, or whoever is willing to. That is a great opportunity for conversation and connection and relationship building. And the more we do that, the more positive interactions we have in the home, the more they build on each other, and the more patience we have, the more we can support each other in our growth. And it's everyone's growth. We're not talking about just the child with additional needs. It's everybody in the home.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I really appreciate your words around um, respecting others' boundaries. And if they say no, that we need to respect that. As parents, we all know our kids will say, I don't want to do that. And, some things we need to help them learn how to do, and some things, do have to occur. But for the most part, allowing those voices to be heard and those boundaries to be respected is crucial, I think, as well in maintaining balance within the family. Because if the child with autism doesn't want to do something, but you require your typical child to do it, where's that balance?
Yeah, it's hard. Like none of this is easy that I'm saying. It sounds very good and easy, but it's not. We know that, right? It's a process, hard to make those shifts. Um, and they're important ones for sure. And it really is about supporting your child. It's not about compliance. It's not about them fitting in necessarily to everything that's happening in the house. There's kind of a give and take there. There's teaching them how to, be successful given what's going on in the house, and then what adjustments need to be made to those events, those activities to support the child. So it's on both sides. Uh,
Absolutely, absolutely. So parents feeling exhausted,
yeah.
discouraged and unsure, raising a child with special needs is carries an additional burden, additional load. What would you want them to hear today about supporting their child and trusting the process?
Yeah. I think it's something I tell all parents is to really see, hear your child and get to know who they are, right? I talk to a lot of parents, and the sense I get is they want to make them fit into their lives versus figuring out how to parent to support this particular child, which is different than another child in your family. I have 3 children. I've parented 3 different ways because my right, and they're different ages at different times, and so I think it's really about kind of relaxing a little bit or leaning into who your child is and figuring out how to support them and who to have on your team in order to support them, because you can't do it alone. And it's important to connect and to collaborate with others, as we were talking about earlier. And it is exhausting. And so I would also just say, to do those little things for yourself throughout the day that you to breathe and helps you to think positively about something and have gratitude about something in your life. And it's about, that joyful jolt that you can give yourself about a picture of a family and or your dogs or something like that that makes you smile. And I think it's in those moments that we build resilience, so that when something happens, and it happens a lot with these families, it's hard, that you can take a deep breath and say, okay, I can do this, because you've taken the for yourself to rejuvenate and kind of have perspective. And again, it's very hard, very hard. But if we all connect and do it together, um, with respect and understanding, then I think we will all feel better and experience more joy, because it really is about meaningfulness and joy, for our children and for our families, for ourselves. That's really what it boils down to, in my opinion.
Great. Lisa, is there anything else you'd like to share with parents today as we wrap up our time together?
Um, the only other thing I would say is to be hopeful, and to always, again, lean into your child and your children and your family and your support system to help you through those hard moments. And there are strategies, there are different mindsets that can really be helpful. And it does not require taking a course, it does not require changing everything. It requires small kind of shifts over time, um, with a basis of compassion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for sharing your insights, your experience, and your heart with us today. Your work reminds us that support is most meaningful when it's built on respect, compassion, and collaboration. So, for parents who are listening today, I hope this conversation reminds you that you do not have to have every answer before supporting your child through their educational journey. You can ask questions, you can seek support, you can collaborate with your school team, and you can continue learning as you go. At Empowering Parents Network, we believe informed parents strengthen the entire educational journey. When families have knowledge, tools, guidance, and community, they're better prepared to serve their children with clarity and confidence. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Voices of Empowered Parents. I'm Dr. Julie M. Lane, and I look forward to seeing you next time.